Hi guys, and thank you so much for joining us again today. I am joined by Zoë Harcombe. Welcome, Zoë.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. Zoë has two websites, zoeharcombe.com and Death, Diet and Health Today, not Death and Health Today. Although that brings us nicely on, neatly on. I met Zoë on Twitter, at least I say I met her on Twitter. I admired Zoë on Twitter for a little while. She's like one of those confident people that tweets things and you think, I wish I'd written that. That was brilliant. And she gained my attention specifically when she wrote something around conflicts of interest, which we'll talk about a little later. But Zoë, why don't you talk to me about what you do in the diet world and what is it that, like, what's your mission? What's your aim in your business?
Oh, that's an interesting one because we don't. And when people say, "Do you have a 5-year business plan or whatever?" I never have a 5-year business plan. I don't even know what I'm having for breakfast tomorrow. So, I mean, that's never going to work. But my personal mission and that of my husband for some time has been to make a difference in the lives of others. And that then doesn't constrain you because there are many ways in which you can make a difference in the lives of others. You can just be a nice person. You can be a nice neighbor. You can take the parcels in. You can take the washing in when it's raining, and you can not be noisy and all that kind of thing. Or you can actually try to help people to be the weight that they realistically can be and to help them stay there and to eat healthily and have a better health and all that kind of thing. But I kind of had two careers. So my first career is much more in line with your current career. And I knew a lot of lawyers in my previous life, because in my previous life, I had what my mum would call a proper job. And I ended up as HR director. At pretty senior level. So I was working as a global HR director, and confession time now, I worked for Mars, the confectionery company.
Ooh.
And I also worked for SmithKline Beecham. So I am familiar with big food and big pharma from the inside.
Sugary tasty.
Yeah, exactly. And then did stuff that was much more worthwhile, first working for the Welsh Development Agency and then for Welsh Water. And then about 2008, 2009, when the first first in my lifetime, big financial crash happened, got the opportunity to basically rethink what I wanted to do. And my husband Andy and I both said, well, let's give it a year or two. And if we can actually put food on the table and cat food in the cat bowl, doing what we really love, then we'll carry on doing it. And we managed to make it work. So
does he love it too? Is this you?
He loves working together. So when I was doing the corporate stuff, and particularly with the Welsh Development Agency, I'd be in Japan or China or the US, traveling loads. I mean, even if it was just North Wales, you'd be away overnight, mid Wales. And Andy started working in the internet sphere when the internet came along. So kind of what he doesn't know about the internet isn't worth knowing. And it just seemed to be a really good fit that I write content. I'd already written a book while I was an HR director. In fact, I'd written 3. So one came out in 2004 when I was the executive director for HR at the Welsh Development Agency. And then a couple more came out in 2008, just before I thought, right, it's now time to go and do this properly. And books don't earn money. People don't really realize that a book is almost a giveaway. And Andy spotted that people were getting on Facebook and talking about the diet or whatever, and it was called Zoe's Diet or the Harcombe Diet or whatever. So the publisher then came back and said, look, can we call it the Harcombe Diet? And can you write another book? And then Andy said, well, all these people on Facebook, let's see if we could get them over to our club. And then we've got a private forum and we can do content just for them, and we can do podcasts and we can do videos and conference stuff and all the rest of it, and hold our own conferences, and big plans. But it kind of worked. So you don't earn what you earned when you were in the corporate world, and I don't care because I'm happier, I'm freer, I'm independent. All the people that get upset at some of the things that I say or tweet or what I say at conferences, who would love to get me fired, and they try to get fellow presenters that I'm with at conferences, they try to get them fired. And if they work for the NHS, they've got more opportunity to do that. it's really liberating that you can't be in that kind of position, that somebody can try to end what you do, which is pretty gross. But I mean, there are idiots out there, and that's what they're trying to do. So that's me.
I heard somebody say that today, actually. Once you master working for yourself, no one can ever make you redundant again. No one can ever fire you again. And that's exactly what you've just described. It's that ability. Yeah. But it sounds almost accidental. Well, it sounds like the two of you've got a great partnership, first of all. I love seeing partners working together, especially when they've got that. I've heard somebody call it a foil, where you've got somebody who's got completely the opposite skills as you.
Totally.
You're like the creator and the personal brand. When you wrote your book, were you writing it as a personal brand, or were you doing it for another reason?
Yeah, I mean, the first one was called Why Do You Overeat When All You Want Is to Be Slim? And I actually could have written it when I was back at college, because I became fascinated with the obesity epidemic, which was just taking off, sort of late 80s, early 90s. At college, no woman that I knew particularly had a good relationship with food. I didn't have a particularly good relationship with food. I would crave things, and I couldn't understand why I craved things that were bad for me. I never craved salmon and green beans or an omelette. Broccoli, never broccoli. I mean, for me, it was fruit gums, chocolate, ice cream crisps, cake. I mean, the really bad things. And of course, you've had some and then you want some more. And it's like, how can I get full if I have veggie curry with brown rice or something? But I never get full if I sit down and start eating biscuits and chocolate and crisps and all the rest. So I really wanted to understand that. So that was almost a kind of, I've just got to get this out of me. I'm an HR director. I need to get it parked and done. And in fact, there's a story at the front of the book that says I was on a training course and we made a commitment to the person that we partnered up with that we were going to do something quite impressive. And my partner said she was actually going to get fit because she'd been a bit of a couch potato since becoming a mum. And I said, I've got this book I want to write, but I haven't got any time. I'm never going to get to write it. And so the trainer happened to walk past just at that time, and he's a really good friend now. And he said, I hope you don't mind me saying that you've got no time to write this book. He said, but I've heard you lot talking about Big Brother an awful lot. And he just kind of wandered off. And I thought, do you know what? I've been watching this thing for 2 hours a night. And if I didn't, I'd have 100 hours. What can I do in 100 hours? And I've barely watched television since. I mean, it was just such a wake up. It was leadership, really good comment. So
and without much, he didn't expect you to necessarily do anything about it. He's just highlight. Here you go.
It's a little gift for you. Yeah. So he gets a thank you at the front of the book. But for Earl Lynch, I would not have written. Yeah.
I mean, I think I was just sharing with you before, I probably didn't give you the details, but I had a real problem with food to the point where I remember sitting, I mean, it's funny now when I look back at it because it's so ridiculous, but I remember sitting on my couch in the house that I'm in at the moment, although this was, 10 years ago. And I had this bucket of M&S, those little treats that people bring in, but like to share.
Yeah.
I was sat there and I was eating them and I was like crying into this bucket, like, it was, I mean, it sounds really sad, but because it's so serious, but it's almost hilarious that I was wanting so badly to stop that I'm crying into this food. I've got a bottle of wine to my right. It must have been a Friday night. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be eating so much sugar, I'm going to grow cancer in my body. 3 years later, I got a diagnosis with cancer. And that moment sticks in my mind. It sticks in my mind very, very clearly. And I say, even from that point, I struggled. You'd think you're going to die. I mean, I didn't know what type of cancer it was going to be when I got the results. But even then, I struggled stopping eating.
That's how powerful it is.
That's kind of what I wanted to say, like the strength of food. And it wasn't food, it was sugar for me. Because even alcohol, I don't think I've got a problem with alcohol, I've got a problem with sugar. And alcohol is just full of sugar. And if I have a glass, it would kind of calm everything down, but it was really the sugar. So have you ever had a problem with your weight, or did you always have a problem just with the overeating? Because I could eat a bowl of broccoli.
Yeah.
I could binge eat on broccoli, feel like I'd done something healthy, and then never particularly a healthy way of eating.
Yeah. No, I did. I mean, there are not many people who can overeat sugar and all the things that I mentioned and not end up with a problem. No, I didn't end up with a problem as in severe obesity. You know, I sort of managed to pull back from it. But, you know, very much at university, I was in a sort of binge starve cycle. So, you know, probably across the 2 days, I was eating vaguely normally, but it was 2 days worth on one day and, you know, bugger all on the other day. And I didn't understand why. And that's what I set out to try to understand. And I think I certainly came up with an answer that worked for me. And I got emails. I put my email in the first book. I thought, well, you know, about 10 people will read this. And then started getting some emails from people saying, you know, oh my God, you talked to me, you resonated with me. And then someone, it was really funny, she said, oh, where were you when I was at university binging on my college room floor? And I said, I was there. I was binging on my college room. I was trying to work it out then. You know, I'm just sort of pleased that I think I identified that basically when you try to eat less, you do certain particular things. So you try to get the biggest bang for the calorie buck. So you end up eating the same things every day, and you end up eating things that are high in carbohydrate and low in fat. So you end up eating fat-free yogurts and fruit gums and apples and black coffee and Diet Coke and all the things that you think have got no fat are really good for you, but they've also got no nutrition. And so your body is then still craving things that it needs to get the nutrients. And all the cravings you would think would drive you, I clearly need some red meat and some broccoli or whatever, but you never end up eating that. You just eat more of the junk. And if somebody said to you, you know, there's a lovely fish and green beans or whatever, you'd have no interest in it whatsoever, because what you really want is carbohydrates.
Because I now eat, I mean, this does sound really, well, maybe it won't sound, I now have to eat weighed and measured food. So I have to weigh and measure my food, which is an extreme. I think the other extreme. When I started doing that and I started eating proper food, I stopped getting so hungry. And so I can clearly see that when you stop eating certain things, your body kind of comes into I know you talk a lot about fat, dietary fat. So
yeah, but I mean, I'd say I would wish for you that you could get to a place that you don't have to do that.
So do I.
Yeah, because I think weighing anything, my next book after the Why'd You Overeat was called Stop Counting Calories and Start Losing Weight. Just like stop that calorie counting, stop all of the behavior that goes with that, stop the choosing fruit gums over salmon, just stop all of that. And it sort of shows, it really tries to show why trying to eat less really doesn't work. It's the worst thing that you can possibly do. The only thing that you can do to get your way out of this is to eat better. And then it's a change of mindset, rather than from restricting yourself and denying yourself and making sacrifices. It's then about nourishing yourself, and it's about eating good, real food because you're going to feel healthier, and making sure that you get all the nutrients, and choosing salmon over brown rice and veggie curry, even though you'd rather I'm a natural vegetarian. I was vegetarian for 20 years, and I would eat carbs all day long if they had no impact on weight and health, but I know they do, so I don't. Yeah. So I'm not a rabid low carb, I'm not ketogenic by any means, all the rest of it. I just eat real food. I choose that real food for the nutrients that it provides, which means I know I should be eating red meat rather than white, oily fish rather than white fish, eggs, full fat dairy products, vegetables, and actually pretty much those should be your staples. Now I do also have fruit if I feel like it. I have a croissant if I feel like it. I have ice cream if I feel like it. We tend to have a couple of chocolates or something chocolatey after dinner. We have chocolate mousse in the morning. We started it during lockdown, and here we are on day 380, and we're still eating this bloody mousse. So yeah, I would want for you that you get to the point that you don't have to count anything, you don't have to weigh anything. It's just that you're making the right choices, and you're aware that you might want something else, but it doesn't feel like a really big denial to say, do you know what, I'm not going to have a ice cream gatto because I know I'm just going to feel rubbish. So that's not being nice to yourself.
How do you think food and nutrition affects you in your business? So do you think it has an impact on a kind of working style? I know it's your business, but I mean, you and yourself, is there something that you gain in how you eat that kind of gives you benefit?
I couldn't do what I do now if I ate the way I used to in college. You know, I look back at college, and Cambridge was pretty demanding. So, you know, my friend who was at Cardiff, I think she did 2 essays in the term. It's like, I'm doing 2 essays a week, and I have a reading list of, you know, 5 books per essay kind of thing. And I don't know how I did it. I mean, I had youth on my side, so you can get away with a bad diet, you can get away with late nights, you can get away with burning the candle at both ends. There's no way I could do that now. So if I sit down to research something, and I might not move away from the screen until I've got to the bottom of something, I need to have stable blood glucose. I need not to be craving stuff. I need not to be thinking, oh, I'll go and get some chocolate because it will pep me up and give me a bit of a boost for the next hour. I just need my brain to be working.
Gives you that focus.
And it does. You know, I eat properly. We've eaten already, so we'd finish dinner tonight by 5:30. That's pretty typical, unless it's a dinner party or something. So I now don't eat until breakfast tomorrow morning, which is probably around 6 a.m. or something. So that's 12 or 13 hours.
You're an early riser, I remember that.
Yeah, 12 or 13 hours when I don't eat, and then we eat 3 times during the day. I'd say a maximum of 3 times. Some people eat twice. They don't like breakfast or they don't like lunch, whatever works for you. But all of this stuff that the dietitians tell you of, oh, eat little and often, and, you know, have your breakfast, then have a snack, then have your lunch, then have a snack, and then have your dinner, and then have a snack. It's like,
I think it's that overwhelm, though. For me, that's it. I mean, I say to people, I knew everything. I mean, I could have been a nutritionist. I knew everything, because there were so many. There was a period in time, I just remember Rosemary Conley being the first one, where there was all these diet and exercise plans, and you could do this, and you could do that. And if you actually took all of them on, very limited life and very confused brain. Oh, no, it needs to be high carb, no low carb, no sugar. Yeah, but so it sounds like you've got a very kind of simple, structured way of thinking about food.
Eat real food. Number 1, eat real food. Number 2, choose that real food for the nutrients it provides. And number 3, eat a maximum of 3 times a day. End of.
Sounds really simple.
Yeah.
Sounds really simple. I want to talk a little bit about so business. It sounds like you kind of fell into this marketing piece. I say fell into marketing because in my mind, I'm like, you got this Facebook group, people start coming to it, people are emailing you, you've written this book, you've left your job now, things are starting to kind of pick up. What have been the challenges of working for yourself? And is there anything you wish you hadn't done in that period of time, either in the early pieces or more recently? I
mean, I never really got weekends, I guess, when I was at the senior level, because I was working at a very senior level. But certainly the beginning of my senior level career, we didn't have email in the way that you do now. And you certainly didn't, you know, when I was over in the Far East, we didn't have smartphones. So you could get away. It wasn't as if people were messaging you the whole time, expecting to get back to you. I would really love that we didn't have quite this 24/7 world, because you really do feel that you can never get away from it, and it is tiring. It's really tiring, and particularly for Andy, you know, I produce the content, I write, talk, lecture, answer queries, all that kind of thing. He does everything else. So he'll do we don't really do much marketing. We're really bad at it. Just if people want to join us, that's great, and if they don't, that's fine. We could definitely have done a lot better, but we're just not kind of promotey kind of people. But he does all the online stuff. He's the one that will get the Monday note out. He'll organise conferences. I do podcasts and he'll put them together. I just interview the person. So he's the whole techie thing. So he really can't get away from it, because he'll check email before he goes to bed just to see if maybe somebody's had a login problem. And he'll check it as soon as he wakes up the next morning, and then he'll check several times during the day. So is everyone okay? You know, is anyone having an issue? Can we give them sort of great customer service? And I can more easily schedule when I write and speak But then when you become known in this field, and you're the kind of person that likes helping others, every day requests are coming in, and a number you have to turn down. But if they're people that I've spoken with at conferences and they say, hey, I'm getting one of those attacks from, dietitians maybe in the field trying to get me cancelled as a doctor or as a academic, a professor, they're trying to cancel all kinds of people. Can you help? Can you check something I've written? Can you write something? Can you do something for me? I want to help. And there's part of me saying, I really need a rest. And there's part of me saying, look, I want to help. I'm in this world now. So for as long as I'm in it, I need to be fully in it with both feet.
But that comes down to your mission and purpose, doesn't it, for you and your husband? Being maximum, I can't remember the exact phrase, but you're basically being of service to people and being a good person in the process. And you're able to help people through that, whether it's through your diet. And that's what I like. This is what I like. I know I'm drawn towards people that are in business for those sorts of reasons. And they go, oh, I've got something underlying it. And I know this is how I earn money. But actually, I there's other things that happen as a result. My impact in the world is not just defined by the amount of people who sign up to my newsletter. It's more than that. I mean, I like I was saying, I came across you in the conflicts, and it was interesting. I'd love for you to just share a little bit about conflicts of interest, how you got into the area of conflicts of interest, a little bit about the cancel culture in your arena, because this is what put you on a bit of a pedestal for me, because I was noting people who over the last year were going, okay, I'm going to step up, I'm going to stand out, I'm going to say, I'm going to talk about some things. And because I need to, even though it may not be that popular. And that's how you kind of came to my attention. So yeah, we just share a little bit about the conflicts of interest stuff that you do and that you've written.
I'm trying to think now what the first one was. So since 2008-9, I've been in the nutrition field. So I think that the official advice that we get in the US, in the UK, in Australia, in New Zealand, globally, which is basically base your meals on starchy foods, is bad advice, really bad advice. And since we've been telling people to do that, obesity has increased, tenfold. Since the early 70s, diabetes is on a rocket trajectory.
Do you think they know? Sorry, Zoe, to interrupt, but do you think the government, in giving that advice, knows, or do you think that they've done what most people do when they see all the diets and they're like, right, okay, none of that, none of that, none of that, none of that. Okay, right, this is like it's just a matter of the safest possible little.
Do they know? I mean, this is why I did the PhD that I did in the area that I did, because to understand the obesity epidemic, you go to look at when did it start, and it started around sort of the 70s, 80s. The American chart is just incredible. It kind of goes on like that, and then it just takes off. So you sort of say, okay, what happened at that point there? And what happened is we changed our dietary guidelines. Now that could be a coincidence, but it needs exploring. So then you get into, what did we change our dietary guidelines to? We changed them to low fat. We said you should not have more than 30% of your diet in the form of total fat. You shouldn't have more than 10% in the form of saturated fat. So why did we do that? Well, we did that because we came to the view that fat caused heart disease. And it doesn't, which is the long and short of my 3.5-year PhD. It just doesn't. There is no evidence whatsoever. And I remember when the first paper went out and it just went viral. I mean, it was covered in Sydney and the US and New Zealand. And I was driving in. I did about 30 interviews the day that the paper came out. And I was going to be on Radio 4 up against the head of Public Health England. And then she wasn't on it anymore. It was just me. I mean, it was just nuts. And they quite quickly came out and said, oh, yeah, there wasn't really any evidence at the time, but there's loads of evidence now. And it's like, well, OK, because that's my next paper that's about to come out. And actually, there's no more evidence now. There really is no evidence that fat is trying to harm us. And it makes no sense that it would be. Because why would Mother Nature put all the nutrients in all the food that's also got fat if she's trying to save us and kill us at the same time? I mean, it's insane. It's absurd. So that doesn't stack up. But when when you realize, and this was a real penny drop moment for me, and anyone who lectures on the circuit in my world didn't study nutrition, because you just get taught nonsense. They figured it out for themselves. So you sort of look at this pie and you say, okay, there's only 3 things that we eat: protein, fat, and carbohydrate. And then you realize that protein tends to be pretty constant in any natural diet at about 15%, maybe 20%, but 15 is a pretty safe global norm. So then you look at the rest of the pie and you say, okay, so if they take fat down to 30% and protein is 15, then carbohydrate has got to be 55, which is what happened. So then they start spreading that message, because actually they've demonized fat. Protein is what it is. So then it's like, oh, base your meals on starchy foods, eat loads of rice, eat loads of pasta, eat potatoes, eat cereals, eat bread, and all the rest of it. And of course, the fake food companies absolutely love that, because that's all the stuff that they make. Don't put butter on your bread, have these expensive, horrible, plasticky, spreads instead. They absolutely loved it. So your question, do they know that there's only when you've got dietary guidelines that are that bad, there's only 2 possible reasons. One is the people who put them together are incompetent, and the other is that they're conflicted, and it can be a combination of the 2. So you look at things like the Eat Well plate, as it's called in the UK, and if you Google Eat Well plate, you'll see it up online. I call it the Eat Badly plate. Other people have got other names for it. I think that was probably one of my first big conflicts of interest things. And back in 2016, when they did a revised version of the plate, I got an article in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, because I'd done a bit of forensics and realised that Public Health England had actually appointed a panel to come up with the revised version of the Eat Badly plate, which was just as bad. And that panel comprised the Food and Drink Federation, the Institute of Grocery Distribution, the British Nutrition Foundation, which is the who's who of the fake food industry, the Association for Convenience Stores. I mean, it was just the who's who of the fake food industry. Now, that's not incompetent.
Can it?
That's conflict. That's really bad. So, when people say, oh, we should beat up the fake food industry and all the rest of it, it's like, no, not at all. I used to work for Mars. I understand very well. It is not the job of the fake food industry to solve obesity. It's the job of the fake food industry to sell fake food. That's why they're in business.
Yeah.
Ideally, be a good employer as well and don't damage your environment. But other than that, why do you care about obesity?
I imagine then, so even when I've met you, I imagine there's been unpopular things that you've said. I mean, the fact that you had all these things around the world. So how does that feel? Like when you're saying something that is totally opposite to the current narrative, how do you feel and how do you deal with the implications of that? How do you make sure you're not wrong?
Oh God, this is going to sound really arrogant, but I make sure I'm not wrong. I won't share what my IQ is. I'm a member of Mensa. I'm on a spectrum somewhere or other of something. I can spot patterns. Show me an academic paper. I don't read the narrative. I just go straight for the numbers. I can spot patterns. I can see things. Now, sometimes I'll spot something and I just know it's right. Sometimes I check it with people I trust, and that's a very small number of people, because it's got to be similarly kind of patterny numbers, anal kind of people. But I know who I can bounce things off, and I will say to them, prove me wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. I think this might be something. Tell me I'm wrong. Don't prove I'm right. Come up with everything. And if they can't prove me wrong, then I'll go out and say, okay, I think I'm right on this. But on things like the conflicts of interest with the Eat Well plate, it's not wrong. It's just not wrong.
It's so black and white.
Yeah,
it's so obvious.
Yeah, you find the minutes. You find the people who were involved in the meetings. You find out who appointed them. You find the memos. You find the letters. You find their own meeting minutes. You find who attends the minutes, who doesn't attend the meetings. You can put together that primarily the people who attended the meetings were the fake food industry representatives, and then you see the plate that they come up with and you think, does that make sense? Is that the kind of plate that they would come up with? And of course the answer is yes. So if I know I'm right, I'll go into bat, and I don't mind being that it's counter to the narrative, because if I know I'm right and I know I can defend it, then I'll go into bat. I'll back myself When they attack you personally, then you know you're right. No, but you do. And Margaret Thatcher, I mean, one of her great quotes was, when they attack you personally, they have not one argument left. It's something that she was quite happy when it got to the point that they were attacking her personally. It's like, okay, so we've done all the arguments here. So I only ever get attacked personally. So I get attacked personally. Oh, you'd only say that because you write diet books or whatever. It's like, really? It's like, no, I write as I find in academic papers, and I write as I find in books. That's a harmony of interest. It's not a conflict of interest. How stupid can you be?
Do you find that people flip it around on you and literally, I mean, this is what we find with the team that I'm part of, and they say, well, the only reason that you're highlighting that is because you're a lawyer and you could get paid for that. And you think, that's just a lazy argument. Or name calling. I find it, I do kind of yawn when I hear the name calling, and I think that's just a lazy insult. But for me, it's when you point to something that there is almost like the opposite argument. Well, you're conflicted because you're pointing out somebody else's conflict.
Yeah. So I remember I pointed out the conflicts with the there's an organisation at Oxford that basically publishes the statin papers. And that they get published in the Lancet and the BMJ, and they've been in a bit of a row, the BMJ and the Lancet, and the BMJ have been saying you should really publish all the data so that people like Zoe and people who do this kind of stuff can forensically look at it, because we're having to trust your statements that everyone should be on statins and they're all marvellous and all the rest of it, and actually the rest of the evidence that the BMJ is looking at isn't holding that up. So they were having this sort of row, and I was one of the first to uncover the conflicts among that group, and I got their conflicts up to about 150 million. And then when this row escalated and the BMJ said, okay, we're now going to appoint an independent investigator and have a look into all of this, and then as part of that independent investigation, disclosure happened. This is now your world. And at that time, which was back in 2014, the disclosure revealed that actually the conflicts of interest were 268 million. So I'd done a good job, but I was barely even half the way there.
You've not even scratched the surface.
Yeah, I know. And then people would say, oh, but you've written a book, so you've got a conflict of interest. It's like, I've written a book about overeating. I haven't written a book about statins. And please help me understand how making 30p on a diet book is comparable to 268 million. And I mean, it's probably 400 million by now. I mean, it's just obscene.
How do people not? Well, actually, I was going to ask a question which I can answer myself, because this year for me has been a recognition of how lazy I am or was around finding this information out, because the information is very easy and clear to see, right? So I was going to say, how do people not know? But I think actually I'm probably best placed to answer that question, which is, why don't people want to know? Is it because we don't believe that's what's happening? I'm curious as well what you think about, and we're coming to the end, but I really just want to hear what your thoughts are over the course of this last year about data. Oh,
no. Let me just check, because I was trying to remember when the big thing that I know highlighted me to you. Oh gosh, it was November. Right. Let's see right. So November. I was kicking myself because I am known for doing conflicts of interest. So I'd done them on the Eat Badly plate. I'd done them on Australian dietitians, South African dietitians, almost anywhere where I was asked to do a presentation. It was quite interesting to go into that world and look at the conflicts in that world. And people were interested. They really were interested. And I only thought to have a look at the SAGE conflicts of interest about October last year. And I started looking at, and
what was the thing that went, I should do this? Because if it's the thing you do.
I know. Honestly, the question for me is not why did I do it, is why didn't I do it 6 months earlier? Because ordinarily I would have looked at a group like SAGE. You'd have to give them a few months to get going, because what I actually did, so in October, I mean, things just weren't making sense. We were looking like we were going back into another lockdown. I'd never believed what was going on right from the outset. So I remember being on the Village WhatsApp chat on that famous, 23rd of March, Bojo Fright Night 1. And people have been talking about, well, we're going to lock down and all the rest of it. And the WhatsApp chat were like, oh, about time and all the rest of it. And I'm like, guys, be careful what you wish for. This is bonkers. We're supposed to be going the Sweden route. This is catastrophic. I'd already looked at the stuff like the Diamond Princess. I know John Ioannidis, not met him, but I know of his work. I've been on comms calls with him. Brilliant guy. It never had me thinking this is going to be mega. It just didn't add up. There are two types of viruses. There are those that become endemic, and there are those like Ebola that you sure as hell don't want to let get out of the bag at all. So a nurse comes over from Africa with Ebola, and you shut down the bubble around the nurse and you snuff it out, and the world carries on as normal. You don't have something that gets into a population and then suddenly say, oh, let's all lock down now, and then lock people in the homes, which is where they're probably most likely to catch something. So it just wasn't making sense. And my first note was actually really well received. So that was back in March 2020. And I'd just done coronaviruses generally, some facts and figures. And that was my first toe dip in the water. And then I did something on social distancing to show that there was actually no evidence for that whatsoever. I can't remember the other ones. I did some more on facts and figures, actually looking at death rates in US, Australia, relative to what death rates normally would be, to try and put things in perspective. And then interwove those with my usual sort of, does red meat cause cancer? No. And will whole grains make you live forever? No, neither. But then just thought, this isn't adding up. And I think there was a story on Patrick Vallance or something saying he was in personally for about 600 grand with GlaxoSmithKline. And I thought he won't be the only one. So it was a big exercise. So it then took a few weeks to do, because what I did was I went back to all the Sage minutes and said, okay, and started putting together a spreadsheet of who was involved in each of the minutes. So, and sometimes there were 2 a week, and this was going back to January, February, and then putting little exits. So you could start to see the people who were going to a lot of meetings. And there were lots that went to 1 or 2. So I thought, I'm not going to look at all 50 of you, because doing a forensic on conflicts of interest on individuals, because people hide it so well, is a real challenge. So about 20 really rose to the top as people who go to every meeting. Neil Ferguson, before he got caught doing naughty things with his mistress or whatever, he was at all of them. Patrick Vallance, Chris Whitty, Jonathan Van Tam, Jenny Harries was reasonably frequent. And then the kind of guys that you're seeing on the telly whenever they're looking for a Sage member. So you put in all of those guys, and then you start looking for declarations on academic papers, declarations at conferences, conflicts of interest, either personal or sort of indirect. And people have done little pictures on Twitter since. So, they'll look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then you realise that the web is just unbelievable. So you've got millions in the order of the money that was going to Oxford from the statin pharmaceutical companies, which also include Pfizer. Pfizer are the makers of the single biggest statin that there's ever been, earned them at least $29 billion, just one statin, one drug in one market. And of course, they were funding Ferguson and Imperial. And he was probably the single biggest reason that the UK went into lockdown, and then other countries followed suit. So I think he has more than returned the money that's been invested in him. Then you look at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, which is the Chris Whitty connection. Then you look at GSK, which is the Vallance connection. But the conflicts were just cropping up everywhere. And there's a table on that blog post. It's on zoeharcombe.com. Just put in Sage in the search box. There's a table on there. And there are people now who have been to more meetings that if I redid it, they would be coming up to the top. But you're going to see the same web, and you're going to see the same conflicts. So, I mean, if we sat people down and said, okay, so let's imagine that one of the world's richest men wants to invest in a cola drink, and he wants to fund the BBC so that even though the BBC is supposed to be impartial, it will only say good things about that cola drink. And the same for Sky News. And adverts in the national newspapers so that the newspapers are going to be favourable towards it as well. And then he's going to fund Imperial College, so they do a report saying basically you've got to shut everyone in their houses until they're all consuming this cola drink. And then you fund the other people on a particular committee that's advising the government that is going to decide whether or not people should be consuming this cola drink, etc., etc. And then that really, really, really rich person invests in every brand of cola drink that is being made at warp speed across the world. And you said to people, do you think that's okay? Or do you think, oh, and also that the person is funding the approval body that's going to approve this cola drink coming onto the market, and approving the organisation that's going to decide the criteria and who should get the cola drink first and all the rest of it. You know, if I presented that to people, they should say, that's really dodgy. That's not on. That's not cricket.
Oh, no, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't argue this at all. It wouldn't be my thinking. I would absolutely say there's something not quite right with that. However, I might argue maybe that's the way big business is done. Maybe that's the only way things can be done, and maybe things are actually done at arm's length through different entities, and it's not actually one individual who's making those, it's lots of different individuals, and of course they've got a plan, and of course it makes sense to hedge your bets. Like if you were in the stock market and you're saying, well, I'm going to bet, I know you don't bet on the stock market, but let's say I'm going to think that this is going to go up, and then I'll also bet that it's likely to go down, and then I'll hedge my income as a result. I think the only way you can look at that sort of conflict of interest, and then the question is a conflict of interest illegal, criminal, or is it just poor governance? And if you are declaring those conflicts of interest and you're telling people about those conflicts of interest, surely that makes it okay. And it's that bit that I think either people go, oh yeah, but is it, it's not like they're killing people, or, she says, it's not like but I think what I find fascinating is this whole, there's a label for that, isn't it? There's a label for the conversation we've just had, conspiracy theory, or conspiracy theorist. That's what label has been put on those statements of fact around conflicts of interest. And it's like, well, of course big pharma are not. Why would they be doing, or why would they be promoting the Coca-Cola? What seems obvious to me is there are these facts, and there are some people that just don't want to look at those facts because it's got that label, and that label is a part of the conflicts. Do you agree?
Yeah, what I find is that actually it is the conflict slide that draws the gasps of breath at the conferences. So to people who are open-minded, who are the kind of people who go to conferences where I present, and they're already thinking the Eat Badly plate or the food pyramid is not a good idea, when you show them how they were put together or organisations that were involved, you do get sort of, you can hear it in the audience. It's like, oh my God, I never realised that. Or you get the nod of, yeah, I realised that. I read one of your blogs or something. But
why those decisions were made is effectively looking behind the curtain around how could that decision have been made. It seems really obvious when you describe it.
Yeah, and you, Anna Had O'Connor, a great New York Times journalist, did a brilliant expose on a network, which is why I talk about the cola, because there was a global energy balance network that was set up, and there were academics that were being paid, and papers that were being written, and it was all around this web of basically saying Coca-Cola can be a great part of a normal energy diet. Don't cut cola out of your diet, just count your calories and allow for it, kind of thing. So, and that really hit waves as well. And the Global Energy Balance Network broke up, and some of the academics that were involved, I don't know if any of them were let go or whatever, but it was a really big scandal a few years ago. What gets me with this one is because we've got this crazy situation that there is one drug in the world that you are not allowed to discuss in any circumstances, in any way, shape or form. The scenario that I've just described would horrify people if that were taking place with, I don't know, any other kind of drug, whether it's Coca-Cola or cocaine or marijuana or a prescription drug or whatever. You know, we have had scandals with drugs, we've had health scares or whatever, but it's just not allowed in the particular field that you and I are not even going to mention. And yes, you can say, well, you know, if this is going to do such great good, then surely that's not a problem. Where I do have a problem, I had to investigate the conflicts, that they are really not that out there. You know, right. Ferguson didn't put at the end of his report, oh, and by the way, my college has received, you know, X million, it's 140, I think I saw somewhere, from Bill Gates or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That should be at the end of that academic paper. You know, when they're talking at their SAGE committees or when they're standing up there at the Downing Street briefing, there should be a disclaimer at the bottom of the screen that says these speakers are getting considerable funding from pharmaceutical industry or whatever the conflicts are. So that's one thing. And then I think there are some that are just sacrosanct. So if the BBC is supposed to be impartial, then be impartial. Don't take money. You know, the day I discovered the BBC even is getting money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I was like, this is now getting absurd. I mean, you have bought the frigging world. This is not cricket. This is really not cricket. And then the final one for me is when you fund the MHRA, which is I've probably got it, medicines regulation, whatever, the body that approves the vaccine. We said the word, sorry, the Coca-Cola. Yeah, no, we didn't mean to say, that other word. But, you know, any regulatory body that is funding any drug.
It's any drug.
I should not be able to come to market with a antidepressant and fund the antidepressant and everyone who's going to write nice reports about the antidepressant and fund the approval body for the antidepressant. That is not good science. That is not helpful or healthy for the population. And at the moment, the power that seems to be concentrated in the hands of a few individuals cannot be good for the world. It just cannot be good. It can't be.
Today, Rishi Sunak, they talking about his wife being connected with Infosys and Infosys. I can't remember the connection with Infosys, but all of
digital ID. Yeah,
that's right. And I don't know whether this is a moral or a legal query or a question, but for me, it's the knowing. It's the being. It's the stating it. And I think we need to go back to those basic principles, don't we, on conflicts of interest, making sure that people are making those statements. There's obviously not enough of an impact if they fail to do so.
Yeah.
I know we're way run out of time, but because I love this. This is kind of where I get to the juice. Tell me more. Why don't you tell us how we can get in contact with you and how we can get your Monday note, or we can join your groups where you're supporting people and are you doing conferences at the moment? Clearly not.
No, we used to do them, and then there was an organisation, a charity that set up in the UK called the Public Health Collaboration. And we, instead of doing our own conference, we wanted to throw our weight behind that one. Because we didn't make money on ours, so it was just a chance for our club people to get together. And if we broke even, we were happy. If we ended up funding it a little bit, that was okay as well. So we thought, great, we don't have to do that anymore. We'll get behind the Public Health Collaboration. But no, I can't wait to get back to conferences. You know, I look at my diary from 2019. I did California, San Diego, Madison, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Scotland, Oxford, London a couple of times, Bristol. I don't know. I mean, it was just fabulous. And being in a room with 1,000 people, the energy, the buzz, the connections. I miss that terribly. I want it back so much and so soon. And I'm so worried that it just doesn't seem to be going towards that, certainly at the pace it should be, certainly with where we're at in the UK right now. I try not to worry, but it's difficult. But anyway, how can people get in touch with me?
Yes, how can they get in touch with you? I was going to say certainly on a global level anyway.
Yeah. So if you're interested in the Monday Note, a sort of dissection of a diet and health article that's in the news, or something related to COVID or whatever, you know, check out zoeharcombe.com. If you're interested in healthy eating and you'd like a friendly support forum where you're trying to eat real food and lose weight and stick to good intentions and learn more about diet and health generally and see podcasts on anything and everything from puppy training to how global billionaires are trying to take over the food supply. We do all of that kind of thing over at a site called Diet and Health Today. So those are our two. .com, I think it is dietandhealthtoday.com.
Great. Look, Zoe, thank you so much for making time for me today. And I'm going to be popping over to Wales to pick up my little pack.
Little goodie bag of books, yeah.
Thank you to your team for the little bag of books. Yes, thank you so much. And especially as I feel like I've learned something, and I like a conversation where I can go, yes, because I like conflicts of interest. I like being able to look at the data and find those things. So I think I'll get some top tips on how to find those conflicts of interest, because it sounds like there are so many. It's worthwhile getting that web, looking through that web for ourselves. Thank you again. Thank you to your husband for setting up with us.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thanks so much.
And we will talk soon.
Brilliant.
Thank you everybody for watching. If you want to sign up to Zoe's website, I have definitely signed up, zoeharcombe.com, and she does her Monday Note, which is full of informative information. For me, that's like my book, my little Bible that I can keep going back to for tips around. Well, yes, there is the COVID stuff, but it's not all COVID related. Like last week, it was nuts. And I was like, that's like interesting, properly researched scientific papers, it feels like. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much for subscribing, guys. And we will see you again. Bye.